take a look. And of course, on Thursday afternoons here in studio, we always welcome Go Local columnist Bob Whitcomb into the studio to talk about his weekly column and everything going on.
Hello, Kate. How are you?
I'm
Can
doing
I put
well.
this coffee
You
over here?
certainly can
or
put it
whatever
right
is?
down. Nice to see you
Nice to
again.
see you.
I'd say a long time no see, but I did just see you
Yeah,
yesterday.
last night it was pretty violent.
When
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
French journalist Jean Lesieur, and who
It was
you know
something.
from your time in France.
Yeah,
And-
very well. He was a neighbor.
Yes.
Actually. That's how we know each other. Not through journalism, but he was a neighbor.
Just
Yeah,
proximity.
Friends, proximity.
So he came in and talked about, gosh, everything political,
Yeah.
a lot on Trump.
Yeah, he hates Trump. I have to say, I'm not an admirer of Trump either, but I'm a little wearing of the Trump stuff.
Meaning
Of the Trump. Well, I mean, how many times can you say he's awful? You know, I think he is awful. I'm sure he'll do some good things. He may even do something good in Syria about this mass murdering president. What's troubling about that was that, my God, I've changed my mind about Assad, President Assad. Well, President Assad and his father have killed hundreds of thousands of people in the last 40 years. There's no really mystery to it. Yeah, why that surprise? Yeah.
Do you think we'll see any action taken? He did indicate
I
that
think
after
he
the
will
last
do
afternoon.
something. Yeah, just sort of a hunch. And I understand people in the military are now looking for targets. It could be just more bombast from the president, but I sort of have a hunch he will do something in this case. So, by the way, so anyway, enough Trump. Yeah. I know I talk about Trump in the column because it's new in the administration, but I should go on a diet on that, I'm sure. There
Bob
are
Whitcomb
other
going on a Trump diet.
there are other things in the world. I've covered Trump off and on for years from when we lived in New York and just, you know.
There are other things in the world
There
and
are,
things that
yeah.
we've been talking about in
Like the
studio.
stadium.
Well, because I want to read
Yeah.
the line that you said.
Yeah.
It was under the section New Stadium Redux.
Yeah.
You wrote, should the state spend a lot of money to please the minority of people who are baseball enthusiasts in a time when tax revenues are falling behind projections?
Yeah, right.
So
Well,
we
I
don't
think-
know what the ask is this time around. We just had Mayor Grabian in.
yeah.
I asked him what folks have been asking all along. The collective ownership of the Pawtucket Red Sox are billionaires. Talked to him
Yeah.
about, why to the average taxpayer should we be funding a 75,
Well,
roughly
yeah, I think
$75 million
like the
park.
new design we saw today was in the media about doing kind of a replica of Fenway in the middle of Pawtucket, and it looked nice. I like the Paw Sox people. I've met them. I've had lunch with them. But I'm afraid we're going to get into what we often do, which is what they call socializing the risk and privatizing the profit. And I think this could be another case like this. We don't know what the final deal is going to be. They're
No,
putting
we're,
it
we're
together.
anticipating something to
The
come forward.
mayor of Pawtucket is sort of slobbering over this thing, and I can understand. It's sort of a lot of it is a depressed old mill town, not all of it, but and some of the artist lofts are great. It's great. Another question, however, I have to ask about a stadium in the middle of Pawtucket, the Apex, that bizarre, kind of Mayan pyramid thing, is okay. That would then become the major business in Pawtucket, and I wonder, do we want to be that dependent upon one business? That's my question.
If that is the major business. One of the
Yeah,
things we
I
asked
think it would be.
the
Yeah.
mayor when he came in, back earlier this year, they released a feasibility study
Yeah.
of what it would take to rehab McCoy, to tear
Yeah.
down and rebuild McCoy. But now that they're looking at other areas, folks have raised, is that contaminated land? Does the CRMC have to get involved?
Probably, yeah. I'm guessing.
It's right by the water.
Yeah, it's very close to the water. The Apex site, it's probably contaminated. That could be addressed and all that. It's a question of money. Who pays whom, as the Russians like to say in Russian. Who is something to whom?
Whom?
Yeah, whom. And again, any of these projects like this, whether it's a baseball stadium or some kind of big auditorium that one company is going to be mostly using, you always have to ask yourself, who's got the risk here?
Yes.
Who's got the risk? Usually it turns out to be the poor people have the risk and the rich people get the profit. So we have to ask how this thing would be. We have to get into the innards of this thing and see how carefully in the public interest it's structured. Again, just going back to the other issue, I think every city has to ask themselves, how much space, how much acreage and stuff do you want to give to one business? And
That's a big footprint.
Yeah, and remember, businesses leave. Now, a baseball team, usually they give you plenty of warning. Other companies, they can leave in 15 minutes. But I think this is a serious question because all this stuff is fungible. So you're going to build this big, huge thing, replica of Fenway, great idea with a green monster, all this wonderful stuff, right smack in the middle of Pawtucket, quite close to the water, as everything is in the Blackstone. If that is moved, if the team is moved, then what? Who's going to go there?
What happens to the stadium?
Yeah,
And what happens
yeah.
to the McCoy land? I mean, that's
Yeah,
another, that's up to
right.
the city to ultimately
Well,
address
it's relatively, you could probably, if there were more of an economy around it probably wouldn't be a bad place to build on, maybe health-related facilities, something like that. It's flat, and that's certainly possible. The other issue I have with the whole stadium thing is, while I'm very skeptical about all these public-private stadiums, I do think if you're going to do it, it should be beautiful, and this looks potentially beautiful, this Fenway thing, and it should be visible from far away. So it's sort of the paradox of my view in this thing. I mean, if you're going to do it, make sure it's beautiful and that everybody can see how beautiful it is.
So if it's a replica of
Yeah.
Fenway, the seat's going to be really, really small and uncomfortable.
Yeah, right. I think that's the plan, and the hot dogs are going to be $15 and all that stuff. So, but
I jest about
yeah.
Fenway. It's,
Yeah.
it's oftentimes the best of both worlds.
That's right.
of a beautiful historic park, but it has,
Yeah.
it's old. but
I
it's
remember
old.
midnight strolls and all of that. So these stadia idea, using the Latin proper plural, as some kind of panacea for troubled cities is usually a myth. Doesn't work.
We'll be watching it very closely.
Yeah.
It sounded like from Mayor Griebian that they're looking
Yeah.
to move very quickly, as
Yeah.
is wont to happen. I was
Sure.
looking at the time frame of 2015 when they had gone to the
Yeah.
Commerce Corporation with their ask. That
Right,
was in April
right.
of
And
that
that's
year
when
as
they wanted
well.
to put it here in
Yes,
Providence.
that
We're
was-
broadcasting from Providence, which was a terrible location because it would have been where all the healthcare and the research and all that stuff was going to go.
That was really the
Totally
brainchild
insane.
of
Totally insane.
Skeffington.
Mr. Skeffington, who was a real great wheeler dealer, then he died out of the blue, and then that fell apart because he kind of knew where all the bodies were buried. He knew which buttons to push. That was a terrible location. On the other hand, putting it close to water someplace, I always thought maybe a site in kind of the upper part of Narragansett Bay and the East Providence side might be a potential there, something kind of spectacular. You
There's
can
a lot
see
of
it from the
development
water.
taking place in East
There
Providence
is,
right now.
yeah. It's quite successful. It's actually quite
Speaking
impressive.
of development, you did mention
Yeah.
in your last column was it the tribute to the Kennedys? What was it?
Yeah, there's something called the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate in Columbia Point, as you know, kind of a peninsula in Boston, and it's basically right next to the John F. Kennedy Library. So it's a tribute to hagiography. Basically, it's gigantic. It's out of size. But the big problem is they're getting about half the attendance they projected.
Oh, really?
And my problem with these things is I just think in democratic societies, these sort of temples to dead politicians, however important they are, and Ted Kennedy was important, are a little unseemly. The other thing is the public is indirectly paying for this through the tax exemption. So, valuable land, it's too big. There's a replica of the Senate chamber there. This is nuts.
This is
And
this
the
is not a
senators-
small.
No, this is another, Great Pyramid, basically.
So do you not plan
no.
on going?
No, I'm not really going. I've been to the Kennedy Library. I was there when the Kennedys gave Gerald Ford, President Ford, a Profile and Courage Award for pardoning Richard Nixon, which I thought was a very interesting evening.
That I just be a
Yeah,
fly in that wall.
that's right.
Well,
Moving
Bob
on.
Whitcomb, I appreciate your coming in today to talk
Sure.
about last week's column. What are you going to be writing for this coming week?
Well, I'm going to write, the top of it's about a book. It's called Television, a Biography, by David Thompson, who's sort of a famous film reviewer, film and other reviewer. And it's a history mostly of American television, how much it's affected culture and society. I felt for a long time you cannot understand the United States and the history of the last, since World War II, without knowing something about television, the technology, how it's changed us, how we've changed it. And it's fascinating. It's anecdotal, but it's linked together with themes. marvelous piece of history, very accessible.
So you're gonna give us little tidbits from that?
Yeah, well,
But no spoiler alert.
More stuff about Richard Nixon and his decision
Yes.
on the wrong kind of makeup and stuff like that, and the famous Kennedy-Nixon
Yes.
debate, which Nixon won on the radio.
Yes.
as we all
That
know.
I feel like is a stalwart in journalism classes in
Yeah.
this country of
Yeah.
when it really changed.
Oh yeah, right. Well, it sort of did. I'm old enough to remember.
When it
I remember
changed.
that. I remember when Queen Elizabeth was coronated. I was a little tiny kid, but on a fuzzy black, very fuzzy black and white.
Well, we've got our next guest
Yeah.
here, Mr. Whitcomb.
Okay.
We'll talk to you next week when you come in.
Okay, great.
As always,
Good to see you,
appreciate it.
Kate.
Bob Whitcomb,
Right.
Go Local columnist.
Cheers.
Cheers. Talking
Cheers.
about all things from his column. And then again, of course,